All right. Thanks everybody for joining us on the December 21st, 2020 final council meeting of the year before the Christmas break. I do just want to start by acknowledging that we are meeting and Zooming on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, and that due to the coronavirus COVID-19 emergency, the City of Courtenay, with authority of Ministerial Order M192, Local Government Meetings and Bylaw Processes, Order Number 3, implemented changes to its open council meetings. In the interest of public health and safety, and in accordance with Section 3.1 of Ministerial Order Number 3, M192, in-person attendance by members of the public at council meetings will not be permitted until further notice. Council meetings are presided over by the mayor or acting mayor, with the electronic participation by council staff via live web streaming. And with that, we have the adoption of minutes.
I'll move the adoption of both sets of minutes, Mayor.
Second.
All right. Are there any errors or omissions with the minutes? And seeing none, unless somebody is against it, I will assume that that has been accepted unanimously. Introduction of late items. Councillor Morin, you were going to introduce a letter?
Yeah, if we could bring up under new business correspondence from Andrea Capelli from the Coalition to End Homelessness.
So moved. I'll second that.
Excellent. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, again, I'll just assume everybody's in favor of that unless somebody puts their hand up in opposition. And that is done. Now, we have no delegations today, but next we get into staff reports. And if somebody could bring forward the lease agreement amendments for the Courtenay Air Park.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that based on the December 21st, 2020 staff report, lease agreement amendments for Courtenay Air Park, Council approve option 1 and authorize the attached lease agreement between the Courtenay Air Park Association and the City of Courtenay for the property having a legal description of PID 00892-149, Lot 1, Section 66, Comox District Plan 14942, except any portion of the bed of the Courtenay River. Same letters for Lot A, Section 66 and 67, Comox District Plan 14521, except any portion of the bed of the river. PID 004-154664, Lot 1, Section 68, Comox District Plan 15512, License of Occupation, Crown License Number V933091, Floatplane Ramp, Lease Area A Plan EP99020, that's 2Ps there, Floatplane Dock, and that staff provide public notice to satisfy the statutory advertising requirements for the provision of assistance and disposition of city lands as per Section 24 of the Community Charter, and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute all documentation relating to the extended terms and renewal of the lease agreement.
Okay.
Excellent. And with that, I'll pass over to Trevor Kirshner.
Thank you, Mayor. I will pass this over to Kate O'Connell, our Director of Corporate Support Services, to summarize the report and take any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Trevor and Mayor and Council. So if you're thinking you've seen Air Park reports already this year, it's true, you have. This is the third time the lease is now coming back before Council. So the first time was back in May, or essentially it was referred back to staff for further consideration. It was subsequently re-presented to Council in August, where Council provided additional direction to staff to look further into environmental requirements, regulation, and monitoring, as well as address some issues and concerns raised regarding potential changes in insurance. So here we are today coming back, and I'm going to walk you through all of the different amendments and the processes I went through with the Air Park and with external third-party experts in order to come up with the recommendations you have before you today. So the first one was an item that Council had raised, which was basically that in a 20-year term lease, the Air Park had the option of renewing the lease every 5 years. And so Council had requested an amendment, just taking away the automation of that 5-year renewal term. So essentially under the old conditions of the lease, it was the Air Park that could initiate the renewal, but it wasn't subject to Council's approval. So this amendment has been made where now any renewal term will also require council approval, and the Air Park was supportive and understanding of this amendment. Moving into the more complex components, I wasn't at the August 17th meeting, but thank goodness Barrett had taken a lot of notes. So going from Barrett's notes, it became quite clear that council was concerned regarding environmental regulations, monitoring standards, oversight in general, and then provided staff with the direction that you wanted a more robust environmental lens placed on the Air Park property, more regulatory where it was actually embedded in the lease. So essentially in the prior lease, or the existing one that has expired, environmental investigations were part of the lease already. The distinction of the former lease versus the new version is that the former one, we would only request an environmental investigation in the event of an event. So say there was a known breach, say there was an accident or something like that, because an event had happened, that would trigger the city's ability and right under the previous lease terms to request environmental investigations. What has changed in the newly proposed lease is that in addition to event-driven investigation requirements, the Air Park will actually be required to conduct regular scheduled investigations over the term of the lease. So the first term or first investigation, what is termed in the lease as a baseline investigation, which is quite a robust investigation to determine base level contamination levels, if any. They would set up and establish the different wells and boreholes and things like that. And that would need to take place within the first year of the lease term. So because of the delay in approving or considering this lease, this new lease term would take effect as of January 1st, 2021. So the Air Park would have to complete the baseline investigation process within the first year of that first 5 term. After that has been established, every 4th year of the subsequent 5-year terms, you would see what we're calling a recurrent investigation requirement. So this is doing a smaller version to see whether or not, or determine whether or not there has been any contamination presence increase over that 4-year term. And the reason I put it at year 4 rather than year 5 was because of the new requirement for council approval of the lease renewal. So what I believe this allows the Air Park to do is they would complete the investigation in year 4. Council would get the results, including if any remediation action was required, would know what that was. And then you would have the ability to review the results of the investigation, review the planned and undertaken remediation work prior to the consideration of another 5-year renewal. So say in the event, and there's nothing that causes me concern about how the Air Park is operating, but should something arise and they fail to address it in a way that is acceptable to council, those are things that you can take into consideration prior to the next 5-year lease renewal term. This is also part of mitigating the risk for the city as the landowner. So in the absence of a baseline contamination study, we don't actually know what contaminants may have predated the presence of the Air Park Association's use on the property. So what could happen in the absence of these regularized investigations is, say the Air Park vacates the property 20, 50, 100 years from now, and we find through a development process that there is contamination in the soil. Without regular testing, it wouldn't be possible to determine what was the root cause of the contamination. Therefore, the city would be responsible for any type of soil remediation that would need to take place, because it would have to be assumed that the contamination predated it, as there was no evidence pointing to another source. I wanted to point out as well is that we do have, and the Air Park also has, significant insurance coverage in the event of contamination or an event. So we have that insurance there for a reason, but this is a bit more proactive in the monitoring. Seeing as I'm not an expert in environmental investigations, I did reach out to a third-party firm, which is Lukowich Engineering, And they were the ones that provided the terminology for the lease agreement itself, as well as determining, based on what council's stated goals were from that August 17th meeting, kind of interpreting what your intent was and putting it into how does that actually play out when it comes to a proper investigation. So all of the information with regard to the quoting, the scope of the testing, anything that's in the lease was determined and from the input of expert third parties. The one area that was of concern to the Air Park Association was that we were going to require them to select Lukovich Engineering as the sole firm. That's not the intent. Essentially, as long as whoever they select is able to meet the criteria outlined in the lease and undertake those investigations appropriately, they are welcome to choose the firm of their liking. Sorry, it's a long report, so bear with me, please. And then going down, you'll see the table. So because there were so many moving parts, I included an amendment table for each of the areas. So I've given you the high level, but it actually shows you how the language has changed to include the investigation pieces. I know one of the concerns that the Air Park originally had when I broached this topic with them earlier this year was the financial cost of the investigation and the impact on their membership. Myself and Barrett met with the Air Park, I believe it was in October, or at least in the fall for sure. And we spoke about the desire to balance environmental investigations with cost effectiveness. And we are quite pleased to see the cost of the investigations come back, or the quote come back at where it did. So the total cost or quote at a maximum range, assuming no further contamination is found, consider that a separate investigation process, including taxes, would be $33,671.10. And as the report mentions, this may seem at first blush like a lot of money, but when you amortize it over the 20-year lease period and then look at it as it applies to the numbers of members within the association itself, the per member cost, if you just divided it between all of them, would be about just over $300. If you turn it into a monthly cost, it's $1.28 per month. So you can't even buy a bad cup of coffee for $1.28. So I believe, based on the response of the Air Park, as well as my own personal interpretation, is that this was a very reasonable amount to be spending for ongoing environmental monitoring and regulation. The next piece has to do with insurance coverage. So council, very rightly so, raised concerns regarding our insurance coverage, considering the unique and diverse nature of the location of the Air Park and its uses. And it was actually very much appreciated that council prompted staff to take a bit of a deeper look into this, because in consulting several insurance adjustment firms, it was determined that the city could use, and the Air Park could use, additional insurance coverage. So the recommendation and what is going to be required in the new lease is that the Air Park increase both their comprehensive commercial liability insurance as well as their liability insurance related to the sale of fuel from $5 million to $10 million. This had a subsequent effect where the city is an insurer of all of our buildings, regardless of whether or not our lessees have insurance. We usually garner extra insurance because they're our assets. We also learned a piece of information here, and therefore also increased our own insurance from $5 million to $10 million. So this will cover all of the city's properties, including the public works yard and the Air Park. And it doesn't come at any extra cost to the Air Park because it was just good management on behalf of the city. For the emergency response planning, this was also found under the insurance requirements. So the requirement for an ERP is now being included in insurance provision documentation. So we did go back and ask the Air Park if they would create an emergency response plan for the Air Park specifically. They equally recognized that that was something that would be of use and was very important to the safe operations of the Air Park, considering its operation type, and they quickly undertook the work. I have received a draft version. It's in the final stages of review from Public Works, and then it'll be shared with the regional district. So we were very happy to see their very fast response on that requirement, and that helps us to satisfy both our insurance requirements as well as the Air Park's independent insurance. Lastly, through discussions with the tenants over the course of the last year, there were 3 items that were requested amendments from the tenants' position. These predated my discussions with them, so would have been done between Barrington John and the Air Park. But I can tell you where the sources of approval or recommendations came from. So the first one is the payment of taxes. So as a tenant, the Air Park did not have the authority to challenge BC assessment of the property. So that is one of the items that they have asked for, was that essentially we allow them to have agency only to the point where they are able to petition or challenge BC's assessment value of the property. The second one is that we agree to look at rezoning the property to the appropriate use. I do want council to take to pay close attention to the without fettering the discretion of the city. So as you know, under the charter, current council can't predetermine the outcomes of future councils and things like that. So this really just keeps it in line with, this is what our intention is in today, but your intention as a council, whether this council or future councils, can evolve over time. And so this isn't pre-committing you, but is showing in good faith that you believe the Air Park is and will be an Air Park in perpetuity, or at least for a very long term. The last part has to do with interceptors. So this was something that was actually recommended by city staff from the public works area. My understanding is this was part of kind of an older version of the environmental monitoring and is no longer required now that we're including the baseline and recurrent investigation formats. And then lastly, before we go into questions, we've probably spent about $4,500 between legal costs as well as accessing the third-party environmental investigation experts. And administratively, this one, as I'm sure you can understand, is very complex. It is not routine. It has taken over 100 hours, including investigation, consulting with professionals on environmental monitoring, liaising with external legal counsel on the subsequent lease versions, as well as investigating and determining insurance requirements, liaising with the Air Park themselves, because what I'm going to say at the end may hopefully surprise you in the best way possible. But we did have excellent discussions with the Air Park throughout the entire process of making these amendments and proposing these amendments. And I'm very happy to say that the Air Park has had an opportunity to review the report, as well as the proposed lease and the amendments, including the cost estimates on the recurrent and baseline investigations. And they are in full support of all proposed amendments and have no concerns with what we have proposed. So lastly, asset management implications is we'll have baselines already established. We'll know what contamination changes are over time, if any, and the city will be able to take proactive action in addressing any environmental concerns throughout the term of the 20-year lease. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Excellent. Thanks so much. It sounds like a lot was done. With that, I will pass it over to Councillor McCollum.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you so much to staff for this report. It's great to see this lease come back before the end of the year. I know the Air Park Association is certainly anxious to get this squared away, and I'm really happy to hear that it's been a positive and productive process in working out these final details. I just had one question that came up for me reading through what our monitoring is and how that's going to be addressed moving forward. I think that this approach makes great sense, and I think it's definitely a huge improvement over the previous lease. But one thing I didn't see mentioned is whether or not the tank nest was the only environmental risk that was evaluated on site by the consultant. Is that assumed, or was this the only area that we requested was focused on?
It was the only area. So it was around the underground tanks and potential contamination of the soil. So the notes that I had read from Barrett had to do with soil testing, well monitoring, those types of things. And those are specifically around the underground fuel tanks.
And so I maybe this is getting a little too into the weeds, but are there other environmental risks on site, and is there like already existing protocols on? I mean, the previous contract or lease said that if there was an incident, it would be reported and addressed. And I mean, if the tanks aren't in the ground, ideally people notice, but I just kind of want assurance that we have other measures in place as well for this area.
I asked the same question of external legal counsel, and where it falls under is there is a single sentence in section within the lease, and sorry, I don't have the number for quick reference, that talks about the requirement of the air park to meet all of the industry standards and regulations. So when I asked our external legal counsel to include information regarding like making sure that they're meeting all of the criteria and requirements that apply to air parks and kind of every aspect that they operate in, that was the line or the part of the lease that they sent back to me that says covers it. So it's one of those ones where they're governed by another regulatory body, and that reference is saying they need to make sure that they're adhering to that, but they would be required anyways as an operating air park.
Great. So yeah, putting it in the lease is stating something that's already in place, so we don't need it. Okay, great. Yeah, and thanks again for this.
No problem.
Excellent. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks very much, Mayor. Thanks, staff. What an enormous amount of work, and what a very thorough report that addresses all sorts of issues. And I'm so glad to hear that it was a cordial process with the air park people and our staff. I wonder if you would just speak a little bit more about the zoning issue in section 14 and what steps we need to take going forward. It seems to imply that we need to take some steps to actually change or address the zoning of the current site. If you could explain a little bit more about that, please.
But this is when I wish Ian Buck wasn't on vacation so early. Essentially, any type of rezoning process on the air park property would be initiated by the air park. So even though we're the landowners, they would be coming to us with that formal request to consider rezoning on the property. Then it would go through regular rezoning processes, but really until the OCP amendments have been completed and council's had an opportunity to review its long-term strategic plans on the land use for that site, likely it'll be in the new year and what that timeline looks like. So essentially, I'm expecting the air park to come forward with the formal request for a rezoning application for the site for the city to then initiate it. But some of those discussions will have to take place as far as what's the best timing for undergoing that rezoning process.
Thank you. Do we have any sense of what type of requests they might come forward with? What type of rezoning they envision?
No, sorry, Councillor Hillian. I can find out more information and provide it to Trevor to liaise with council with if you'd like.
Well, it's okay. I'm just curious. We're not fettering our discretion or that of a future council with this term, but I just wasn't entirely clear what the implications were. So would appreciate when more information comes forward, if it could be passed along. Thanks.
For sure.
Excellent. And hang on. I don't see any, Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Ms. McConnell, I just wanted to follow up a little bit on what Councillor Hillian said. You mentioned that the new, well, not bettering the discretion of this council or other councils, that the new zoning would make clear that the air park was a use for the very long term, or I think you said, or in perpetuity. I was just curious about about the length, just where that wording would come in terms of the length of the commitment.
So when you're considering rezoning the property, like normally you don't want to look at something that's a temporary zone, you know, like changing it from one for a certain amount of time with the intent of changing it back to something else. You're looking at the long use plan for that site. So the language was there where the air park was seeking a firm commitment from council to go undertake rezoning the property as an air park. So by rezoning it that way, especially going through an OCP amendment, it would take substantial processes, you know, another OCP process in order to change it back or change it to something else. So it's more along the lines of that at the time when we were undertaking the negotiation with them on the lease, that no other use had been identified for the air park site at this point, and that based on the previous relationship and our current relationship and intended use for the site, that a rezoning could be considered and may be amenable to both parties. However, as council considers the long-term use of that site, unknown information coming from the OCP amendment engagement process, council's mind is still open and may be changed by things that have yet to come. So that was the distinction that we're making, is that you don't want to do it's like creating a bylaw. You don't want to take a temporary bylaw if you know you're just going to amend it 10 years from now. It's better to think about what your long-term plans are as prior to fully engaging in the rezoning process.
Great, thanks so much for clarifying that. Thanks, Kate.
And sorry, council, I meant to mention at the beginning, we do have Paul Johnston on the meeting, who was the environmental investigation firm consultant that I worked with. So if you have any questions in regard to some of the more technical aspects contained within the appendix of the report for the testing, there's a lot of acronyms in there. You know, if you're wondering whether or not some form of test will accomplish something else, Mr. Johnston is the appropriate person to ask. So if you have questions for him, he's now on the Zoom meeting as well.
All right, and Councillor Hilling.
Thanks, Mayor. Since he took the trouble to call in, we better ask him a question at least. My question is with regards to the current operation of the air park, which Kate has let us know we shouldn't have any reservations about, and I think that is what most of us felt, but it's certainly reassuring to hear that. And I just wonder if our consultant could speak to the engagement with the air park in relation to this project, and the level of both professionalism and quality assurance that is evident in the existing operation, so that citizens can rest assured that any risks on the site to the health of the estuary and otherwise are being managed appropriately.
Well, I was going to say sorry, go ahead.
Councillor Hillian, sorry, the baseline investigation is the piece that's going to determine all of that information. So the liaising with the air park and everything like that was done between myself and Paul Johnston, so the environmental firm. And essentially some of those ranges between the low and the high are dependent on the existing monitoring that they have in place and where they're at. So the baseline investigation, that's the one that's going to determine whether or not they have items that they still need to put in, if what they're monitoring is good enough, those types of things. So that process that you're speaking about between the consulting firm and the air park, that's what's required as part of the baseline investigation. So that hasn't taken place yet.
All right, well, I'll put my question on hold for later then. Thanks very much.
Excellent. And Councillor Theos.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, a lot of good, solid work has gone into this report, but again, it's very complex. My question's in regards to again, there's complexity with the environmental standards and whatnot, and as you had mentioned, Kate, is there and it might have been in the report, I didn't spot it, but is there an appeal process from either side if there's questions or concerns or doubt about the findings during these investigations?
That's an excellent question, Councillor Theos. And yes, it's actually included. So after any investigation has taken place, the results are to be provided to council. And should we need a third party to be able to review and interpret what the meaning of those results are, that is included in the lease, and that would be undertaken at the cost of the tenant.
All right.
Thank you very much, Kate. Thanks. Excellent answer.
All right. Thanks for that. And Councillor McCullum.
Yeah, sorry. I just had one more question about the baseline start of the process. And I mean, I recognize that we, or the Air Park Association, has likely had a long history of fuel in this area. And I'm wondering if there is like a buffer of some evidence of some gasoline contamination could exist in the soil without necessitating like soil remediation right off the bat. Like, I guess I'm not formulating my question very well, but I imagine that they may have even had older tanks on site at some point, and whether or not there is like a process in which the city or the Air Park Association can look at that without seeing that there's a need to necessarily undertake expensive work initially. Does that make sense?
Mr. Johnston, is this a question that you can answer?
I think in part, yes. The applicable standards and regulations, the provincial standards and regulations, allow for a certain level of contamination which does not require remediation. In other words, it doesn't have to be pristine clean. It only has to meet a standard which is attached to the land use and zoning. So if there is something there from past uses that does not exceed those standards, then there's no need for remediation. And I can also add that if there's no evidence that that contamination has gone off the property, then there's not actually any legal requirement to remediate it other than the city wanting to it for, future liability issues.
Great. Okay, that's great. That definitely answers my question. Thank you.
Excellent. And Councillor Cole-Hamilton. Oh, I think you're muted still.
I am indeed. Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question about the interceptors in section 22. And I was wondering if you could just refresh my memory as to why it is that that clause is being removed. Why we're not keeping in the option to request that if needed.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I came into the process on the lease renewal or amendment quite late in the game. And the note that I had on the original report in regard to this item was that it was at the recommendation of the Director of Utilities. I wasn't sure, I didn't realize that we had a Director of Utilities, but was told that came from Public Works. So that was the information that I had, that it was previously agreed upon and that it was at the recommendation of the Director of Public Utilities at the time. Unfortunately, I don't know who that person is or the basis for the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. I guess it's difficult not knowing who suggested or what their thinking was. Would it be a concern to leave that in? That if we don't know specifically why we're removing it?
I believe it would be. This was one of the items that the Air Park continued to double check that was actually still being recommended, was the removal of section 22 interceptors. And it was one of the reasons why I believe they were they didn't have concerns regarding supporting the newly proposed amendments with the environmental investigation components included. Grease, oil, and sand inceptors, I'm not entirely sure how that's as important as the newly required baseline and recurrent investigations are. Mr. Johnson, are you familiar at all with the idea of grease, oil, and sand inceptors and what role that might play?
Well, they're fairly common appurtenances for things like parking lots and that kind of thing. So there may be areas, for example, in the refueling area, it probably is appropriate. I don't know what was proposed, but it may be one of the things that we look at. Well, it probably will be one of the things that we look at in the baseline study, just to see if that's indicated. The actual specification of them and how they're connected and all that sort of thing is not something that I'm expert in, although our company does do it. But about the best I can say, I think at this point, is that it's a valid concern, and it's a good defense against non-point specific contamination from things like fuel spills and that sort of thing.
And Mr.
I do have a follow-up, but I see Mr. Kushner has his hand up, so maybe I'll just sit back.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know if everyone's having the same lag I'm having, but it's everyone's kind of pausing on and off. So I hope it's just my computer. Maybe I can provide some clarity. I know that Kyle Shaw, our Director of Public Works Services, had some information with respect to this. It is simply because the city storm catchment system outside of the air park, in fact, goes through the air park, and the size and the volume of the storm pipes are too large for interceptors. They simply wouldn't work. There would be too much flow going through the air park. But what we can do is, I know that it's been vetted through Public Works, and I know this it's been vetted through Senior Leadership Group. What we can do is provide information back to council in the form of an email after, in advance of the next meeting.
Yep. Yeah.
Mayor,
Yep.
Can I ask my follow-up?
Yep. Absolutely.
As I understand it, interceptors are there to immediately mop up a spill if one happens. From what I'm hearing Mr. Kushner say, it sounds like they wouldn't be functionally useful in this context. It seems like having some other mechanism for picking up a spill as soon as it happens, given we're right on the edge of the estuary, would be prudent. Is there another system that we could use that would give us that capacity to quickly respond to a spill when it occurs?
Yeah, thank you. I think I got the most of that. You're right in the first part, is that the sheer size and volume of flows are too great for your typical interceptor style. That said, is that the emergency response plan, in combination with the city's environmental response plan, because of course council will recall that we have the mobile trailer. So if there was a spill of magnitude, that we would be attending on site with that trailer, as well as the air park group as well.
All right, well, thanks. It sounds like we do have a contingency plan in place that in the absence of interceptors, we still are going to make sure that we're able to address spills when they happen. Okay, well, that is good to hear. Thanks, Mr. Kushner.
Excellent. And it looks like that might be it for now. It does sound like this has been a very robust process, and I appreciate all the questions from council and all the work that's been done by staff. And with that, I will move to the polling of council, because it was moved and seconded. I believe it was a fairly lengthy motion. So with that, I'll start with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
Sorry, in favor.
It's all good. Councillor Morin.
Favor.
And Councillor Theos.
I am in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. So excellent. That's great. Yeah, I believe one of the #1 quotes from 2020 is "You're on mute." So with Councillor Morin,
if we still have other items regarding this, I just I realized that there was something I forgot to bring up during the adoption of the minutes. So if we can come back to that at some point, thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Do you want to just do it right now, and then that way we're as
Okay.
caught up as we can be? Yeah.
I was just actually sending it to Rayanne. I noticed in the December 9th minutes that there was an item that was duplicated in Councillor Hellion's report. It's just was something that was listed twice, the community to community forum. So it was just to clean that up.
Excellent. Okay. Excellent.
And I've sent it to Rayanne, or
Awesome.
I'm sending it now.
Yeah, and like you said, it is just sort of an administrative cleanup. So thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
And with that, we got the lease agreement for Lot 2 for the Courtenay Air Park.
I can move that, Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, so I move that based on the December 21st, 2020 staff report, lease agreement for Lot 2, 120th Street, Courtenay Air Park, subsequent to the publication of notice, Courtenay Council adopt option 1 and authorize the attached lease between Dwayne John Dupic and the City of Courtenay for the property having a legal description of PID 000892149, Lot 1, Section 66, Comox Land District Plan 14942, except any portion of the bed of the Courtenay River and further identified as Lot 2 on Plan BIP 64872, and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute all documentation relating to the lease.
I'll second that.
Excellent. And I'll pass it over to Trevor Kushner.
Oh, just to make a point, I think Council Cole Hamilton's audio seems to be going in and out sometimes. I don't know if he's aware of that.
Yeah, it seemed a little hiccupy, especially at the beginning, and it kind of got a little bit better near the end. So Councillor Cole Hamilton. And it's way worse when it's muted, but.
I'll try headphones to see if that helps. Thanks for letting me know.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton. Thanks, Councillor Theos, for that. And back to our regularly scheduled program.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Kate O'Connell.
Thank you, Mayor Wellens and Council. Just before I get into this one, even though it's another air park report, I'd just like to thank the consultant, Paul Johnston. And Mr. Johnston, you're free to leave the meeting at this point. So moving on to the the first of 3 air park hangar leases. So the first one is to Dwayne John Dubiek for Lot 2. So Mr. Dubiek has committed to leasing Lot 2 for a minimum of 5 years with a renewal clause of 3 additional terms. And essentially, we undertook a fair market rental appraisal back in May of 2019. And based on that, they determined that there should be a minimum of 20 cents per square foot for the charges. So based on that, the annual rent to be paid by Mr. Dubiek will increase by 4.5% each year. This percentage is consistent with the previous lease terms, continuing at the annual rate percentage increase applied to the 2 previous agreements. So this is not really anything new. It's just informed by a more updated market rental appraisal that was conducted by a third party. For staff implication, about 40 hours staff time was dedicated to this, between making amendments to the lease, liaising with the leasing, as well as conducting and facilitating the appraisal process. And it's fairly straightforward. We're not proposing any other amendments to the lease aside from the value.
Excellent. And did anybody have any questions from council? And seeing none, I'll poll council now, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
In favor?
Councillor Frisch.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
Sorry, my mute wasn't working. In favor.
Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. Excellent. And next we have the lease agreement for Lot 3.
Sorry, and I seem to have closed that. sorry, I'm paperless, so I had it on my screen, and I think I got overly excited and started dropping things. Just give me one moment, please.
You know what? We got to move and second it anyways. So if somebody would like
Perfect.
to move and second.
Mayor, I'll move that based on the December 21st, 2020 staff report, lease agreement for Lot 3, 100 20th Street, Courtenay Air Park. Subsequent to the publication of notice, Council adopt option 1 and authorize the attached lease between North Bend Ventures Limited and the City of Courtenay for the property having the legal description of PID 000892149 Lot 1, Section 66, Comox Land District Plan 14942, except any portion of the bed of the Courtenay River and further identified as Lot 3 on Plan VIP 64872, and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute all documentation relating to the lease.
I'll second that.
And back over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, once over to Kate O'Connell.
Thank you. So for Lot 3, we have North Bend Ventures Limited has committed to leasing Lot 3 for a minimum of 5 years with a renewal clause of 3 additional 5-year terms subject to council approval. So same terms and conditions as the previous lease. The initial lease will be for 5 years commencing on January 1st. Again, the 2019 market rental appraisal impacted the value or the lease recommendation value of this hangar. So the annual rent paid by North Bend Ventures will increase by 4.5% per year, continuing with the annual percent increases applied to the previous lease agreements, and is in consideration reflective of current market values. This also took about 40 hours, which included the release, the renewal, liaising with the leasee, as well as conducting the appraisal itself in 2019. Again, there are no other recommendations being made as far as changes or amendments to the lease aside from the value.
Excellent. I don't appear to see any questions from council. So going straight into voting, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. And I think I can confirm, Councillor Cole-Hamilton, your audio is sounding better. So thanks for that. And I believe our last lease agreement for Lot 4.
I can get this one if you'd like. I'll move that based on the December 21st, 2020 staff report, lease agreement for Lot 4, 100-20th Street, Courtenay Air Park. Subsequent to the application of notice, Council will adopt option 1 and authorize the attached lease between Airspeed High Ultralights and the City of Courtenay for the property, having a legal description of PID 000892149, Lot 1, Section 66, Comox Land District Plan 14942, except any portion of the bed of the Courtenay River, and further identified as Lot 4 on Plan VIP 64872, and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute all documentation relating to the lease.
Second.
Excellent. And I'll pass it back back to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll pass this back over to Kate O'Connell.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. So the Airspeed High Ultralights is the current owner of the office building located on Lot 4 within the Courtenay Air Park. They operate an ultralight aircraft flight training business, including ground school governed by Transport Canada regulations. The business employs an instructor and utilizes the ultralight aircraft for training purposes. So the Airspeed High Ultralights currently subleases a portion of the lot and office building to Sealand Aviation Limited for storage of a single aircraft and use of an office space. Sealand Aviation Limited conducts flight training, aircraft rental, and sightseeing services. The sublease is subject to all provisions of the master lease, and the sublease was approved by council in July of 2018. Similarly to the other 2 hangar leases, their lease costs are being influenced or impacted by the 2019 appraisal. And Also, we're recommending a 4.5% increase over the term, which is consistent with the previous agreements. In this case, it was a little bit less time because we were able to piggyback on some of the good work done earlier, as far as finding some shortcuts on the report writing and things like that. So about 35 hours instead of 40 to undertake this lease renewal. No other terms are being recommended for amendment at this time.
Excellent. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge the work of staff in all of these matters and say thank you. It's also, I believe, helpful to give us a better understanding of some of the things that are going on in the property leased by the air park. And I hope we can continue to have a positive relationship with what is one of our few industrial-based lands in the valley, and that they might continue to generate employment and serve the community. Thanks.
Thanks very much. And with that, I don't see any further questions or comments, so I'll pull council, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
In favor?
Councillor Frisch.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. Excellent. And next we've got external reports and correspondence for information. And at this point, all things being equal, I think I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Where? There we go.
Shall I move receipt of that for you?
Yeah, if you'd like to move receipt, that'd be great.
Second.
Excellent. So this is a letter and presentation of Ministry of Municipal Affairs, Nicola Marotz, for the BC Board of Examiners, and basically an award of certificate for Trevor Kushner for local government statutory administration. So I just want to acknowledge Trevor in this, and I do see that Councillor Hillian also has his hand up, so maybe I'll let Councillor Hillian speak.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd actually like to propose an amendment to the receipt motion that Council heartily congratulate Trevor Kushner on this significant accomplishment under exceptional circumstances.
Second.
Yes.
I'll second that.
And if I could just speak to that, Mr. Mayor, I think I didn't actually know that this was going on, but I think that given everything that Trevor's had on his plate during this last number of months, the fact that he has also been completing these requirements and has reached this achievement, I think is really exemplary, and I want to offer hearty congratulations, as I'm sure we all do.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Hillian. And I'll assume that Council is in agreement with that amendment, so we can dispense of that. So, and then Councillor Morin, you wanted to speak as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that obviously my congratulations and to thank Trevor for not only stepping in, agreeing to be our interim CAO during a pandemic, something interesting to put on your resume for sure, and also continuing with professional development and all the other numerous tasks and responsibilities. So thanks so much, Trevor. Congratulations.
Thank you, Council.
Yeah, I think that's been I think one of the things that Council has been in really good hands this year, and been really impressed with the ability to still get some things done while adapting, and I think, you know, as we look back over this year, it certainly was challenging, and so just as Councillor Hillian said, a heartfelt thank you for your leadership. And with that, did you want to speak? All right, I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And certainly thank you for the comments. They're very much appreciated. And it certainly has been a challenge. And you know, I certainly couldn't have done this without an incredible senior leadership team and a lot of hard work and very dedicated people. And you know, it's interesting. I've been your deputy CAO since November of 2018, and with my previous experience as a deputy CAO, I finally met the eligibility criteria for the timelines for the statutory certification. And I really want to thank council for allowing me the opportunity to be a leader in this organization. And it's a fantastic place with amazing people. And it's really, at the end of the day, it's really about the amazing people that makes the Comox Valley and Courtenay so great. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Trevor. And with that, I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton on the amended motion.
Enthusiastically in favor. Congratulations.
Thank you for that. Councillor Frisch.
Congratulations, Trevor, in favor.
Councillor Hillian.
Yes, congratulations, Trevor. Well done, in favor.
Councillor McCollum.
Congratulations, Trevor. Well done. In favor.
Councillor Moran.
And a further congratulations, definitely in favor. Thank you.
Excellent. And Councillor Theos.
Yeah, I just am very impressed with how you've stepped in, Trevor, and took the lead. And as you said, the rest of the senior team has done a phenomenal job. So kudos to all of you. So thanks again. I'm in favor.
Excellent. And I'm in favor as well. And again, just a huge thanks for all the everybody kind of stepping up to get things done. And in particular, Trevor, your ability has certainly shone through this year. So again, huge kudos and thank you for everything. And with that, I'm going to stop the share. Wow, it kind of worked. There you go. All of a sudden, Mano's picture is up there, but I think staff have it all sorted out. Again, thanks so much, everybody, for your comments and speaking up. I think that was great. And next, we have the CBRD IRTSC notice of disbandment.
Move receipt.
Second.
Excellent. I don't know if staff wanted to speak to this, but Councillor Hillian, you've got your hand up.
I'll defer to staff if they have something to say first, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just quickly add that I think the work that has been done to date has been great on this committee, and it really identifies the concept of working in collaboration and consensus building with all the other local governments, and I think it's an important first step, and certainly in a lot of the transportation initiatives that are going to come forward in the future.
Thanks. And Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to note the praise for Councillor Frisch that's contained in this letter, the gratitude expressed for his work on this project. Councillor Frisch has provided great service to the Valley through many of his initiatives, and this one in particular, I think he deserves a significant amount of credit for, and I'm glad to see it recognized in the letter. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Councillor Hillian. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And I certainly appreciate noting the work that we've done at the IRTSC. Of course, as you all know, it's on the backs of staff, and so there was obviously a ton of work done by them, and so I want to show appreciation for that. And of course, all the members over the many years, going back all the way to the cycling task force in 2006. So there are a lot of people that have taken part in moving this transportation agenda forward and allowing active transportation to be a bigger part of that. So maybe just I'll go through the list of people, if you don't mind, that have taken part over the years. I hope I don't miss anyone. Most recently, of course, Councillor McCollum stepped in for a meeting, and that was much appreciated. And Councillor Bissinger from Comox. Director Grieve's been actually on the committee for a long time. And John Higginbotham, which you all know from the Accessibility Committee, has been there for quite a while. We have Catherine Davidson and Georgina Price from the Cycling Coalition, and Angela Holmes, who started out as a rep from the school district, but was also the vice chair for a long time. and Trustee Sheila McDonald and Councillor Vicky Brown, of course. Last term, Barbara Price was there from Comox, and Jim Gillis, going way back to its inception as the Cycling Task Force, was a director. And you all know MLA Ronna Ray Leonard, then a councillor, was a big part of this. And in case anyone forgets, Ms. Gothard from the Planning Department played a huge role in the Cycling Task Force in making sure that it was well managed at a point when it didn't really have much funding. So the City of Courtenay really stepped in and took the reins there. So thanks very much for that, and thanks to everyone who's helped move this forward. I look forward to that regional transportation memorandum of understanding working its way, allowing our council and the other governments in the valley to move ideas around and share those and work together for transportation. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And it does get dangerous when you start listing people off individually, but I'm glad you were able to get through that list to show that appreciation. I thought I saw another hand up, but I think it's gone now. So with that, it is just correspondence, but I'll pull council nonetheless, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Absolutely in favor, and many thanks to Councillor Frisch for his work. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch.
Yep, thanks very much. In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor of receipt.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor, and thanks for all your work on this, Dave.
Councillor Moran.
In favor, and thank you from me as well.
Councillor Theos.
In favor for the receipt. Thank you.
Excellent. And I'm in favor as well. And again, thank you, Councillor Frisch, for your leadership on this important file over the years. And we'll see how it evolves into its the next evolution, as it were. So looking forward to that. And with that, we have a letter of appreciation from the Courtenay Air Park.
Receipt.
Second.
Second.
Excellent. I think, again, just more kudos to staff, but I'll maybe pass it over to Trevor Kushner.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Nothing from my perspective, but it may be appropriate for Kate O'Connell just to comment on how this letter came about.
Sure. So in working with the air park, we made it very clear to them what the drivers were, so the perspectives that were shared from council and the concerns. Part of the process was very clearly laying out in a transparent and accountable way the steps that were being undertaken, why they were being undertaken, and at what points throughout the process the air park would have the opportunity to provide insight and input. I think the consistent communication with the air park and meeting those communication goals, if any timeline slid, we were in communication prior to the slide of a date. If they had any concerns or questions, they were able to send them forward to us and get a response in a timely manner. And I think that really helped to build the relationship over the past 4 months, is that they trusted and believed that we were doing what was best for them, while also recognizing that we have a large stakeholder group, being all of the residents of Courtenay, to consider. And they recognize that equally. And, even taking things down to what a dollar impact made it seem more relatable and understandable, and something they could take to their membership as a way of kind of lessening the blow as well. So working together on how we could message the information, what was the importance of the amendments, and being very transparent and consistent and accountable with the communication model throughout really helped to shape a very strong relationship in this process with the air park.
Fantastic. And yeah, just huge kudos for the ability to keep that message and consistent. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I also wanted to thank staff for all their hard work on this. I feel really strongly that the air park is a really important part of our community. So it's great that we're helping them out however we can and making sure that they can grow in the future. I also wanted to thank council because you'll note that they've outlined the grant that they received a while back, and I don't know if anyone remembers, but they actually got quite a bit of money from the federal government, and we did push to get that letter of support out almost a year ago. So thanks very much.
Excellent. And seeing no other further questions or comments, I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton,
In favor?
Councillor Frisch,
In favor.
Councillor Hillian,
In favor.
Councillor McCullum,
In favor.
Councillor Moran,
In favor.
Councillor Theos,
In support.
and I'm in support as well. And from there, to reports and updates from council, and we'll start with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Great. Thank you very much, Mayor. I just wanted to make just a short statement. In the last week, our community has heard some painful and troubling stories of youth who've been bullied, taunted, and harassed. And that this happened at all is troubling, but that it happened in places where young people have a right to expect safety gives rise to even greater concern. Everyone in our community has a responsibility to treat young people with respect and to ensure that others do the same. And those who choose roles of responsibility towards youth, be they public officials like us, or those who work directly with young people, whether it's teachers, counselors, coaches, mentors, police officers, and many other roles, owe a special duty to create spaces where young people are safe and respected, and to take clear action when they are not. And we have a responsibility to ensure our words and behaviors model these values. Now, I'm sure everyone around this table agrees that bullying and harassment should not be tolerated and that everyone deserves to feel safe. But words are only part of the answer. And over the weekend, Councillors Moran and McCollum and I spoke about ways in which we could take concrete action to ensure that our own house is in order and that we're living up to the values we hold dear. In our core values, we state that people matter and to be accountable. And to that end, I'll be putting forward a motion in the new year that equity and inclusion be a focus of our strategic planning going forward. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Councillor Cole Hamilton and Councillor Moran and McCollum as well. I think it's such a critical issue in our community. Obviously in the schools in particular, but really love the leadership on this. This is a great thing. So thanks very much. Councillor Frisch, did you have any? If you don't, that's totally fine.
Oh, no, sorry. No, I didn't.
Okay, no, fair enough.
Thanks.
Councillor Hillian.
No, I'll pass. Thanks, Mayor.
All right, Councillor McCollum.
I don't know what's going on with my mute tonight. I'll pass as well. Thanks, Mayor.
All right, thanks so much. And Councillor Moran.
Mayor, I just wanted to add one thing. Thank you, Councillor Cole Hamilton, for reading out that statement. I just wanted to note that something interesting came up this week from the city of Dawson, and they, I guess, had an incidents of racism towards a staff member, and they sent out, I think, a really well-worded letter in response to that, and it was just kind of timely that this happened along the same lines as the conversation that Councillor Cole Hamilton and McCollum and I had. So I just think it's really important for community leaders to take those stands publicly with words and then with actions. And I'll be passing on this letter that Dawson put out, as well as maybe an example of something that we can, look at going forward, because I think we do need to make it really clear that those actions and behaviors are not welcome in our community. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Councillor Moran and Councillor Theos.
I just wanted to say that I think the standard should be for everybody. Of course, I do know that it often happens within the younger generation where it starts, and it does have a long-lasting effect. But again, throughout all ages, it could happen at work. It could happen with seniors, youth, certainly. And I think the bottom line is just everybody should look at just treating each other as equals and fairly. Nothing more, nothing less. That's all I have to say.
Thank you much, Councillor Theos. And yeah, it can be certainly something that is pretty damaging. And I know, having been bullied fairly significantly as a young student, to the point where in grade 5 I actually quit school because of it. You know, it took me a couple of years before I could get back to public school, and it was still very difficult. You know, I think for myself, one of the things that I was able to do when I got to high school was help create a peer counseling program to help deal with it. When you look at those concrete examples, I'd actually focused on going into elementary schools and working with kids at risk there. And I think one of the things that's really, the focal point of this is what are the actions that we can take? What are the things that we can actually do beyond you know, just the words? And so really looking forward to that coming back to council. In terms of some of the other stuff that's happened in the last couple of weeks, one of the really exciting things that happened, and I think most of council would probably agree, I got to have a meeting with the Minister of Municipal Affairs, Josie Osborne, the Honorable Josie Osborne, and it was great. She's someone that I've had a really good working relationship with over the last 6 years. And so some of the things we talked about was really focusing on the housing, and in particular, I brought forward the request from our Comox Valley Homelessness Coalition for some housing, not just this year, but some permanent housing going into the future. Brought forward sort of that concern around mental illness and addictions, especially this time of year, especially with the year that we've just had, and the restrictions that we have right now and how that's impacting people. On small and local business supports, on how we can be more effective on that, and get those supports from the provincial government. Infrastructure grants, and I did specifically bring up the 5th Street Bridge, just in case they find an extra grant laying around somewhere, that we'd be more than happy to receive more provincial funding on that. And then there was also conversations around internet connectivity in remote communities. And one of the interesting things is that the Comox Valley, by and large, does have a decent internet connection. But if you go up to Forbidden Plateau or Dove Creek and some of the areas that are still within the Comox Valley, a lot of those places still don't have decent internet connections. And so we may not be as hard off as some more remote communities, but it does impact some of our local communities here as well. And then, of course, we have the islands. And one of the other things just in the last couple of weeks, worked with Gord Johns, our MP, a member of Parliament, on bringing forward a motion to make gift cards for basically substituting the Christmas parties that staff would be getting this year, so the businesses could still provide that to their employees and not have it be a taxable benefit. Unfortunately, it didn't pass, but just really want to say thanks to our MP Gord Johns for taking that thought forward and seeing if hopefully we can get that support. And then basically with the other hat that I wear, Economic Recovery Task Force Chair, we are working on a Shop Local campaign right now. So you'll see things on the Facebooks and the radios and stuff to really push that message that we really want people to be supporting those local businesses right now as much as possible, given the year that we've just had and the fact that they really need our support more than ever. So, and with that, unless there's anything else, we have a in-camera resolution.
Happy to move this. Move that a special in-camera meeting closed to the public will be held December 21st, 2020 at the conclusion of the regular council meeting pursuant to the following subsections of the community charter: 91C, labor relations and other employee relations; 91I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. 91K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages and that in the view of council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the community if they were held in public.
Second.
Excellent, thanks for that. All those in favor, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor?
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
Support.
And I'm in favor as well. Thanks for that. And next we have for, we're scheduling the January 4th regular council meeting.
Mayor, I move that council cancel the January 4th, 2021 regular council meeting and reschedule to January 11th, 2021 to accommodate the Christmas and New Year holiday schedule.
Second that.
Excellent. Any questions or comments regarding that? Seeing none, again, I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor?
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. So that gives us a little bit of extra time when we get back rather than jumping right into a council meeting. And under new business, we did have the Comox Valley Homelessness Coalition letter. Maybe I'll pass it back to Councillor Morin.
I believe that we received some correspondence from Andrea Capelli making an urgent request for some public building space to be used for emergency shelter over and above what the Salvation Army provides. I'm not sure if staff is able to comment or expand on that at all.
I'm not sure if we have to have it moved and seconded, and then I can pass it over to staff. Does that make good sense? Yeah. So.
Okay, sure. I'll move that receipt. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor McCollum, for seconding that, and I'll pass it over to Trevor Kushner.
Thank you, Mayor. Around the end of November, I was speaking with Andrea Capelli about some initiative like this, and I had mentioned at that time that it would be appropriate that they send a letter to council. I think in particular because of the previous resolution of council that we're going to cancel the meeting on the 4th and move to the 11th. It'll be about 3 full weeks before council could actually entertain this with a staff report. And Mayor, I did send you a text. I think it would be appropriate that council could pass a resolution directing staff to work with the group immediately to find a suitable space. And I will say at the time that we'd originally talked about this initiative, we kind of had a consensus at the time that the Connect Warming Center actually might be the right location. There's enough room there, and there are washrooms, and of course all the supports are there as well. So I'll leave that with you, but I would anticipate that the weather could change. In fact, I think I looked at the weather reports just now, and it's going to dip below 0 in the coming days. So I think it would be appropriate that staff connect immediately with the group if council's on board.
Okay, I appreciate that, and maybe what I'll do is I'll just accept a receipt of the letter, and then I'll if somebody would like to move a motion, or I know that Councillor Hillian, you've got your hand up, so maybe I'll let you speak first.
Thanks, Mayor. I was going to move to amend the receipt motion, but since that's off the floor, I'll simply move that council mandate staff to work with the coalition to end homelessness, to provide a solution to the temporary housing needs identified, or rather temporary shelter needs identified, and to bring forth a staff report at the earliest possible opportunity regarding efforts made.
All right, and that's been seconded. And Mr. Kushner, that satisfy what you're hoping for? Excellent. And did you want to speak to that at all, Councillor Hillian, or should I just move along?
Well, only to say, Mr. Mayor, that I'm immensely appreciative of our staff for their willingness to work on these issues. There was a time not that long ago when city councils, including the one in Courtenay, didn't believe it had any responsibility in this regard. But I'm pleased that we've come such a long distance and that our staff have taken the lead. I also want to note the appreciation expressed in the letter from the Coalition to End Homelessness for the efforts of our staff with regard to the warming center and the other program supports that the city has provided during these difficult times.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And Councillor Theos.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm very curious. In the past, one of the churches, I can't recall which one, had a facility that was available for a number of years for overflow for the shelter. And it was for people that wanted to follow by the rules and wanted a place to stay during those extra cold winter months. Now, I'm wondering what has happened with that relationship, if it's still ongoing. And from my recollection, in talking to them during those years, it was actually never full. So that overflow seemed to be working at that time.
Councillor Hillian, you wanted to respond?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Briefly, the Salvation Army, which operates the existing homeless shelter, has generally provided additional space during exceptionally cold and wet periods, and they continue to do that. That is the request that's being made recognizes that even with that extended capacity during these times, extra capacity is in fact required. I'm not aware of another church in recent years that has lent its facilities, but it has been the Salvation Army through the shelter that has provided that service. And they're a part of the Coalition to End Homelessness, so would be totally in sync with this request.
Excellent. Thanks for that clarification, Councillor Hillian. And Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I just had a question about how this is going to be supported by other levels of government. And I apologize, I had time to just briefly skim the letter before we went into the meeting. But there is mention that BC Housing is supportive. Should we be able to provide somewhere for them to locate? And I mean, perhaps we don't have all the answers right now, but is there the possibility that some of this funding could help with other improvements in the warming center, or are they coming forward strictly with an offer of some staffing?
Mr. Christopher?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Obviously, this is late breaking for us as well as staff, and I know that by me saying this, Kate will be reaching out to Andrea tomorrow, first thing, and we'll get some information back. And what I'll do is I'll provide an update email to council, but I suspect that any improvements will be temporary in nature, and because typically emergency shelters are time stated. So, but like I say, we will get the information and report back as soon as possible.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I think, again, going to one of Councillor Hillian's comments, right after the last election in 2018, I believe some of our first meetings were actually with, as a council, or some of council was with the Homelessness Coalition, and Heidi from BC Housing was there. And, at that point, again, with the extreme weather, they were able to fire up the extra beds. And I think that's part of it too, going back to Councillor Theos, is that there are sort of the standard beds they have, and then there's extreme weather ones, and then there's extra capacity beyond that. So there's sort of there's already those tiers there. And I do fully trust staff will be talking to BC Housing to see how they may be able to fund and potentially make what we have as space maybe more functional, and help with that funding. Again, I think as a municipality, we have stepped up, but it'd be great if the province recognizes that partnership and provides some more resources to us. So, and with that, if there's nothing else, I will poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Sorry, Mayor, I think we're missing a seconder on that.
Oh, I'll second then.
I seconded it already.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. I was pretty sure we had a seconder, but all right. So Councillor Frisch, sorry, did you? Right? You're in favor as well? Thanks. I assumed as much. Councillor Hillian,
In favor.
Councillor McCollum,
In favor.
Councillor Morin,
In favor.
Councillor Theos,
In favor.
and I'm in favor as well. And so thanks, staff, for bringing that forward again. This letter just came in, just days ago. So glad we were able to get it up, and I'm sure, like I said, staff will work as they often do in an amazing way to support the members of our community. So really appreciate that. And for final adoption, we have one item.
I'm happy to move this. I'll move that the City of Courtenay Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 3023/2020, which is a bylaw to amend the City of Courtenay Fees and Charges Bylaw number 1673 in 1992 to amend the sewer utility user rate for 2021 be finally adopted.
And thank you, Councillor McCollum, for seconding that. And is there any questions or comments regarding this? Seeing none, we'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton,
In favor?
Councillor Frisch,
In favor?
Councillor Hillian,
In favor.
Councillor McCollum,
In favor.
Councillor Morin,
In favor.
Councillor Theos,
I'm in favor.
and I'm in favor as well. So thanks for that. And just before we move to the very final thing on our agenda, I do just want to thank everybody for a really, I don't want to say unprecedented, but an amazing year. And really want to say thanks for all the efforts. Oh yeah, I got one of those hats around here as well, although I think my shirt speaks for itself probably. But I really want to wish everybody Merry Christmas, season's greetings, Happy New Year's, Happy Hanukkah. And one of the events that I attended, and I forgot to mention earlier, was the actual menorah lighting that was done by Rabbi Bensi. For the last 6 years or so, I've come to council, or City Hall, I should say, to be part of that menorah lighting. This year had to be by Zoom. But I will say that menorah lighting was by far the best Zoom meeting I've ever had. Lots of great music, lots of great fun, and really showed what you could do if you have to. So again, I want to thank everybody who's adapted. I know not everybody is at the same technical level. I'm not looking at anybody in particular, but maybe I am. I really do hope you guys get as much rest and relaxation and family time as possible this season. So again, thanks so much. And with that,
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas. We do have to move adjournment.
I'll move Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Second.
Excellent. All those in favor of adjournment? And feel free to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year as you please.
Merry
All the
Christmas.
best to everyone.
Happy holidays all.
Happy New Year. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Ho, 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 ho.
Oh, God.